In lesson 4.2, we're going to build on what we did in 4.1 with our asymptotes and use this to graph the rational function, so actually get the full graph of it. So a reminder that your rational function, you have a numerator and denominator. The first thing you want to do is simplify if possible. So factor stuff, see if stuff cancels, things like that. Now, these next few steps don't have to be done in any particular order, but we're going to find the y-intercepts. We find y-intercepts by plugging in 0 for x. We're going to find the x-intercepts. We find x-intercepts by plugging in 0 for y. We're going to find the vertical asymptotes. Remember, we do that by setting the denominator equal to 0. We're going to find the horizontal asymptotes. There were those 3 rules from lesson 4.1 about the degree of the numerator and denominator. And once we have all that, we'll have asymptotes, we'll have at least a couple points, and then we're just going to plot a few more points in between and beyond the intercepts and asymptotes, and then connect everything with nice smooth lines. So it's a little work, okay? I'm not going to lie, but it's definitely doable. So let's take a look at this first one. So like I said, the very first thing we always want to do is simplify, factor if we can. There's nothing to factor here, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's go ahead and find our x and y intercepts. To find x-intercepts, we plug 0 in for y. And now I'm going to solve that. I'm going to multiply both sides by x plus 3. So I can get those to cancel, and that gives me 1 equals 0, which obviously is nonsense. That can't be, so that means there are no x-intercepts. All right, let's check out y-intercepts. We find y-intercepts by plugging in 0 for x. So our y-intercept is 1/3. So now we got that point. All right, now we're going to find vertical asymptotes. Remember, we find vertical asymptotes by setting the denominator equal to 0. We're going to solve that, and we get x equals -3. So I'm going to go ahead and put that vertical asymptote in. We're going to find horizontal asymptote. The degree of the numerator is 0. The degree of the denominator is 1. So if the degree in the numerator is less than the degree on the denominator, that means our horizontal asymptote is 0. And that's why there weren't any x-intercepts, is because we actually have an asymptote there. All right, and then the last step is to just plug in a couple more points, okay? Remember, our guidelines said that we want to plot at least 1 point in between and 1 point beyond the intercepts and the asymptotes. So we have an asymptote at -3, so I'm going to maybe plug in -4 and -5. I can't plug in -3, so maybe plug in -2 and -1. I already know 0. That's probably good enough. So we plug these in. If I plug in -5, that's going to give me -1/2. If I plug in -4, that just gives me -1. -2 gives me 1, and -1 gives me 1/2. Okay, so we plot these points. And you should be able to see what's happening here. Let me switch colors. Okay, we know these are asymptotes, and so we need to approach them. So it looks like this is kind of approaching like this. And this one's definitely going this way, so this one's going to be going up. And if you're not sure of what the actual shape is, you can always just plug in some more points. But that's basically what we're doing with these. So let's check out another example. So we want to sketch this and give its domain. This one asked for the domain too. My apologies. The domain is going to be all real numbers except your asymptote, which was -3. Okay, let's sketch a graph of this one and give its domain. So again, the first step is going to be to simplify it. Now there's nothing to factor here, so not much to do. So let's go ahead and find the x and y intercepts. We find the x-intercept by plugging 0 in for y. Now to solve this, I'm going to multiply both sides by 1 plus x so that those cancel. we just get 0 equals 3 plus 2x. So x equals -3/2. That was a negative. Okay, so there's an x-intercept. Now we're going to find y-intercept. Remember, we find y-intercepts by plugging in 0 for x. So we have 3 plus 2 times 0 and 1 plus 0. So we get 3. All right, we got 2 points on this graph. Now we're going to look at the asymptotes. Vertical asymptote, we find that by taking the denominator and setting it equal to 0. So it looks like -1. That was not very pretty. Horizontal asymptotes, the degree in the numerator and the denominator are both 1. So we need to look at our leading coefficients. Our leading coefficients are actually 2 and 1. Be careful with that because it's not written in standard form. So y equals 2. All right, so that's going to give us a little bit of structure. To finish out this graph, we're just going to create a little table of values. So let's see. I can't plug in -1, but I could plug in -2. You could plug in -3 if you wanted to. We've already plugged in 0, so let's plug in 1. That's probably enough points. So if I plug in -3, I get 3/2. If I plug in -2, I get 1, and if I plug in 1, I get 5/2. So if I graph these, 2, 3, -3, 1.5, -2, 1. Remember that point's there. And then 1, 5/2. Okay. I think I can see this. You're going to draw this nice smooth curve approaching all of those asymptotes. Sorry about that squiggly line.